See that rock?
Yes.
No thrower has ever reached it.
And is the contest to hit it or pass it?
You'll be lucky if you get halfway. Now, come on.
Now, after you, Hercules. I've never thrown a discus before. I'd like to see how it's done.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. Who was that?
That was that guy at the end with the weird hair.
Okay.
Oh. Wait, the weird hair. Oh.
I'm Reese. To my left is...
David.
Further off to my left.
Irina.
Across from me.
I lost his name. Was it Aetus?
Aetus or something?
Aetus.
Yeetus.
Yeetus.
Just yeet him out of here.
Also known as
Noah.
And using the golden fleece to cure a painful ingrown toenail on his sandalless foot, we have...
AJ.
Why did you lose that sandal?
I'm always losing sandals.
Spanking his kid with it.
You gotta wear...
Chancla.
You said you have Crocs, you gotta wear those more often. Those don't come off your feet.
It's better for water.
I don't know, but I cut the strap off the back on my Crocs.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there.
That's a problem.
That's why.
Today we're talking about Jason and the Argonauts, a movie that came out on my notes, 2010. But no, it actually came out in 1963. It's directed by Dan Chaffey, who also directed... I thought this was going to be a whole slate of movies I had never heard of, but there's a couple that I have.
Oh.
Pete's Dragon.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The Three Lives of Thomasina.
Oh, gosh, I remember that
The Three
movie.
Lives of John Cena.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I'd watch The Three Lives of John Cena.
That would be amazing.
1 million years BC, The Viking Queen, Creatures the World Forgot, and Chomps, his last film. His wheelhouse is mostly fantasy films. Of course, this is the most notable for sure.
Creatures
easily.
the World Forgot is a cool name.
Yeah.
I would totally watch that.
I don't know, but I think Thomasina was a pretty popular one, too.
Yeah.
Probably not as well known as this one.
But the breadth of his career was like littered with all of these fantasy pictures.
This came out in 1963?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't that before the Iran hostage crisis?
Yes. What'd you watch?
How'd they make a movie about it before it happened?
Argo. It's Argo. Guys, he watched Argo.
Yeah.
Where are the knots?
That was a stretch.
The
That's
Knots of Argo.
A very much different movie, but also a bit of an adventure. So
That leads into a good question I had. Are Argonauts like the astronauts of the sea?
They're
yes.
astronauts
Yes,
of
they
the
are.
ship.
well, the Argo is the name of the ship, and they're the Argonauts.
Knots like nautical.
Well, we don't call them space shuttle knots.
We
Astronauts.
But astro is like
it's like space.
Like
astrology.
astronomy.
Yeah, I know, but they're based off the. You know what?
I like how you're trying to wiggle your way to
Not
have
just
a
mean
reason
sailor.
behind this.
Sailor knots. Got it.
The movie stars Todd Armstrong, Nancy Kovac, Honor Blackman, and Gary Raymond. There's screenplays by Beverly Cross and Jan Reed, and it's based on the Argonautica, made in the 3rd century BC by Apollonius Rhodius.
Sounds very Greek.
Gosh.
It is very
Maximus
Greek.
Decimus Meridius.
I love how intense their names sounded.
Yeah. They're cool, though.
Yeah, they're cool.
And for those that are new to this podcast, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then, towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, you guys, had y'all seen Jason and the Argonauts before your viewing of it for this series. Irina.
Yes, I had as a kid, and I don't think I watched it ever since, but it was one where you see little flashes of that film in random either documentaries or YouTube videos where someone's talking about special effects and the history of special
It's
effects.
referenced a lot.
Yeah, it's referenced a lot, especially Harryhausen. He's referenced quite a bit. But I do remember watching it as a kid, and there are definitely scenes from this movie that I hadn't forgotten, and I was actually calling them out ahead of time upon watching this. I was like, oh yeah! One of those moments.
Cool. Noah.
I remember nothing.
So you probably had not seen this.
I don't think so.
And if you had, you were a little babe who had nothing,
was a wee-
nary a thought. David.
I have not, but similar to Irina, I did see clips of this all over the place. I feel like it's referenced a lot.
Yeah, I feel like even if you haven't seen it, it's kind of ingrained in your mind as like history, a footnote of the, not a footnote, but a significant moment of film history. How about you, AJ?
I'm pretty sure I had seen it, but, just like Irina and David, don't really remember it in particular, but it was something that was always, or not always on, but something that had been on.
Yeah.
I picked up on.
Yeah. All right. David, before we get into our story, do you want to give us that call to action?
Oh, crap.
You
Yeah.
didn't prepare for this one.
I you know what? I'm gonna go straight down the line. I don't even know what that means. I'm just gonna go for it. How about that? All right.
You're going to charge ahead with
gonna-
Hercules at
Down
your
the
back.
line.
Hey, if you guys like our podcast and you want to keep hearing it, we would love your support. We are on all the major podcast platforms. We're on Apple. We're on Podcast. We're on Spotify, Podbean. We're all over the place. Wherever you want to listen to us, you can find us. We also are on YouTube now. We're slowly updating all of our episodes onto there. We also have an Instagram, a Twitter. If you feel like reaching out to us about episodes you're interested in or ones you like, feel free to let us know. Another big thing we're trying to ask is if you like us, tell your friends. If you know somebody who likes movies, I don't know, maybe let them know you like Franchise Killer. And tell him to listen to it or them.
And rate on Apple.
Yeah, that's a big one too. 5 stars might be one of the most helpful things.
5
Good.
stars.
Wrap that up in a nice little bow.
That's right.
Thank you. Let's get into that story.
Jason and the Argonauts, the classic story of an epic voyage that has been told and retold since the birth of Western civilization, now presented on the screen for the first time.
Pull! Pull! Till your hearts crack and your backs break!
Jason and his band of Argonauts, the mightiest warriors the world of adventure has ever known, in search of the fabulous magic golden fleece.
Where will you find this miracle?
I have heard there is a tree at the end of the world, with a fleece of gold hanging in its branches.
Pelias usurps the throne of Thessaly, killing King Aristo, but knows that a prophecy states that one of Aristo's children will avenge him. The god Hermes, disguised as Peleus' soothsayer, watches as the infant Jason, Aristo's son, is spirited away by one of Aristo's soldiers. Pelias slays one of Aristo's daughters after she seeks sanctuary in the temple of the goddess Hera. Because the murder has profaned her temple, Hera becomes Jason's protector. She warns Pelias to beware of a man wearing one sandal. 20 years later, Jason saves Pelias from drowning in a river. An accident orchestrated, that's in quotes, a quote-unquote accident. A quote-unquote accident orchestrated by Hera, but loses his sandal in the process. Learning that Jason intends to seek the legendary Golden Fleece to rally support against him, he encourages Jason in the attempt, hoping that Jason will be killed. This is a fast-moving movie. Like, it really gets to the Avengers Assemble pretty quickly. We're not there yet.
It's funny because the boat is so slow.
It is, but, like, this is I was noticing just how quickly it sets up this plot.
Right.
Any other movie would take 20 minutes to get to the point where Jason
is introduced at all.
Yeah, it finds Pelias, and Pelias is like, oh, that guy doesn't have a sandal on.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it happened in the first, 4 or 5
So-
minutes. of this
And
movie.
modern takes would have him as a little kid flipping about.
Yeah.
So this is, I always thought this was an epic. I thought this was going to be like a 3-hour venture. It's not even close to that. It's like an hour 45. So they kind of have to keep a quick pace. I don't know. It's pretty short for what I expected.
Do you know that he had been on a voyage for 20 years before he started
Really?
this one, supposedly?
You don't get that sense at all.
Not
you just,
one
I
bit.
just got the sense that he was just, oh, this is like his little village or something, and
Yeah.
he saw this guy drowning.
Yeah.
Saying something, he's like, I
So-
will be king one day.
In all likelihood, he's 40 here.
Yeah. So for me, this movie kind of got off to a rough start, and I am looking at through the lens of this is a movie in the early '60s. But even with that, I mean, we covered the Dollars trilogy not too long ago.
Very different.
Right.
And that movie, I felt, is really strong, beginning to end. But this one, the introduction to the characters, the way that the acting was very kind of cardboard to me. Very like, here are the plot points. This is what's happening, at least at the beginning.
So what I really like is in the intro where we're seeing Pelias talking to some guy from the temple. I don't even know what he would be considered title-wise, but he's explaining the god's plan for him. And he's like, yes, you will, keep the kingdom. He's like, haha, yes, and I will give you my sword. And then he goes, but this guy's going to come along, kick you off the throne. That's Zeus as well. He's like, I don't think so. No. Who do I have to kill?
Yeah.
Not a bad plan, though, sending Jason off to go get himself killed to kind of, subvert what is supposed to be inevitable.
Destiny.
What were y'all's thoughts on, the opening, kind of the first act of this movie, I guess I should say?
I'm just going to say, going back to the fast pace, I think that's, I appreciate that it's fast paced, but the manner in which they choose to introduce characters and continue is very kind of like, all right, here, get into the screen. There you are. There's the plot. All right, get out, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like very much trying to move people across the camera, I guess.
We got to get
And-
Jason on this story.
Yeah, so you kind of forget who everybody is, and there's there are a lot of plot points that are kind of like swept under the rug, maybe not intentionally.
Yeah.
But you don't really understand the connections. You have to really pay attention to what they're saying, because a lot of the time they're not really putting in the correct emotion for what's going on, if that makes sense. You
Yeah.
know, you would expect a little more passion in this part or a little less heated discussion in another, and it kind of loses you.
Yeah, I
in
got
that
the
way.
sense that they were ready to just get out of there and get to the adventure.
Yeah,
it was like,
which is fine by me.
okay, here's all the table setting real quick. All right, now we're off to the races.
Yeah.
They clearly didn't care about making Jason interesting, in my opinion. I think he's really, what's his name? Todd Armstrong. Mm-hmm. And I know I think his character was dubbed by someone who was not him.
Yeah.
Like some English actor.
Yeah.
So that could have contributed to it. But every time this guy talks, it's just it seems out of place almost.
He also has really nice legs.
He does.
All these
Nice
guys have
lean
pretty nice legs.
When you're on the sea, you need to shave a little bit.
Apparently.
It really helps with the salty air.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I also think it's not fair to judge this movie based off this first section, because we haven't seen the Ray Harryhausen influence on this movie yet. That's really this movie's showpiece.
Yeah.
They're like, we got Ray Harryhausen. That's this type of thing. He's one of the few effects related people, he's stop motion, who his name is more recognizable than any of the others.
Right.
How many effects artists can you say have that same connotation other than Jim Henson? Mm-hmm. H.R. Geiger is almost there, who did Alien.
Wes Anderson?
He's not effective.
He's a director.
Oh, you're talking.
I'm talking about people who are
right,
strictly
right.
in the design.
You were thinking
Yeah.
stop motion, though, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
It's for the most part, you think of companies, but you don't think of individuals necessarily.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the opening to this movie? Any of these plot developments?
It's the funny thing is there are movies of the 60s, there are so many that are really great, and maybe as far as acting goes and directing, they are superior, but they weren't this ambitious. So like taking yourself back to this time period and thinking about a movie of this this magnitude, I guess, like they're trying to represent gods in a time where people couldn't really this was a huge risk as far as special effects go and the amount of content you're trying to put into a movie. So representing gods and all these special effects with magical beings and objects is just, that's a huge endeavor.
Think about it this way. 1963, this predates the lunar landing. So,
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
That's a good point.
yeah, so it gives you a little bit of a perspective on when this actually came out.
Yeah,
That said,
it's weird.
I think there's movies before this that, do certain things on a more impressive cinematic level, even like Wizard of Oz, which was the 30s,
When did 2001 A Space Odyssey come out?
60s, I think, late 60s. I think that was like
That
68.
was after this.
Yeah.
I figured it was after this, but I mean, Kubrick did a lot of groundbreaking special effects in the 60s as well. Imagine if Kubrick and Harryhausen got together for a movie. That'd be something.
That'd be an interesting pairing. Like I couldn't see them working together, but I would definitely be fascinated to see what that would look like in an alternate reality. All right, since not much goes on of much note here, we can move on with the plot. This is where it gets good. Hermes takes Jason to Mount Olympus to speak with Zeus and Hera. Hera tells him Zeus has decreed that she can help him only 5 times. This is the same number of times that Jason's murdered sister, the lovely Briseis, called on Hera for protection. She directs him to search for the fleece in the land of Colchis. Zeus offers aid, but Jason declines. He sets out to build a ship and recruit a crew. Men from all over Greece compete for the honor of joining his quest. Because their ship is named the Argo, after their builder, Argus, the crew are dubbed the Argonauts. Among them are Hercules, Hylas, and Acastus, the son of Pelias, who is unknown to Jason, sent by his father to sabotage the voyage.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of that intro, not good vibes as far as intelligence goes. He goes straight into a camp that is clearly,
Jason,
not
you mean?
on his side. Yeah, Jason. And he speaks with the leader and says, "Yes, I'm going to kill Pelias.
I will be king.
I've come to reclaim my land."
He's not the brightest. I mean, there's parts in this. If this were like a real world, he'd be dead long ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who's like, let's drive our ship through the crushing rock cliff faces. But no, this is a fantasy, so of course Jason will survive something like that.
Yeah. Plot armor.
But yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But how do we feel about how they pull off the gods in this? And it's obviously dated.
Right.
But I kind of admired the ambition of it.
I thought that this was actually really cool conceptually. That scene where where he's taken by Hermes to Mount Olympus, and he's kind of just a chess piece.
Yeah.
And they're towering over him. Unfortunately, they're all, as Irina said, old white people, but
Yeah.
we can look over that maybe a little bit.
It's just kind of funny that it feels like just a group of bored, rich, white people who are just like, life is so boring here.
Entertain me.
I kind of like
I'm
that,
gonna
though.
play with these mortals a little bit.
Isn't that what the gods were, basically?
This is my
though?
champion.
Yeah. I kind of like that, though. They're not these...
No, it's
they're just, like-
interesting, but it's just funny. Like, because that's exactly the kind of persona they're putting on. Like, that it's kind of hilarious to
The
watch.
intelligence level, even of the gods, is a little iffy sometimes. I think one of my favorite moments is when Jason is talking to this old guy about Hermes and stuff, and he's at the statue, and he's like, "Oh, look, Hermes," and he goes, "Yes." And
No,
he goes,
not you. The statue.
oh, whoops! I forgot. I'm in disguise.
I believe it, because Jason's dumb.
Yep.
Hermes.
It's
Yes.
funny.
Although, let's be real, if, you're standing by this old, kind of weird guy, and you see there's a statue of Hermes right in front of you, and you're like, oh, Hermes, and this guy's like, yes. You'd probably still not think he was Hermes.
That is I thought it was cool how it's revealed that it's Hermes, though, how the actual armored Hermes.
Yeah. And then he just kind of expands into this giant being.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
It made me think of Theoden in the Two Towers, where he's fading from his infected disease from Saruman into his younger self.
The exorcism.
That's a better way of phrasing it.
Yeah. We can't talk about Lord of the Rings right now.
We want to. Honestly, this is... You can sort of talk about it because this is an inspiration for Lord of the Rings.
Peter Jackson loves this movie so much so that he did like a full commentary for it.
What?
I didn't watch it. I did like get some of the highlights of that though. He's very inspired by Ray Harryhausen. In fact, like some of Peter Jackson's earliest films, like unofficial films, like short films he did in school and stuff, were very Harryhausen-esque. Like he had stop motion, claymation, all that stuff. And apparently he has so much like memorabilia and rare artifacts that are Jason and the Argonauts related.
No.
I love Peter Jackson.
Yeah, in fact, there is a scene, and we're not at Talos yet, but that I was like, this scene in Lord of the Rings would not exist without Jason and the Argonauts. And I'm wondering if we're thinking of the same thing, or if y'all know what I'm talking about.
I don't know, but maybe if you start mentioning it, I will be like...
So in Fellowship of the Ring, when they're in the three boats and they go between the Argonauts.
Literally called Argonath.
Yeah, the perspective shot there of them going up against the toe and looking at these massive statues. I was like, that's the moment I saw Talos in this. I was I kind of see. I made the and the fact that Peter Jackson uses all these miniatures versus going full CGI,
or perspective changes on green screen, where you have somebody who's
forced perspective
distance
as well.
Yeah. We've touched upon some of the special effects, and we will get into the monsters later. But aside from special effects, I don't know about you guys, but there was one scene that happened a little earlier that for some reason I really like the way it was set up, and it's within the Temple of Hera, and Pelias has come up to what's her name? Starts with a B. Briseis.
Yeah, that.
And
Briseis
I
is
love
what it is.
Briseis, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way that they incorporate Hera just kind of as a shadow in the background talking to him. And basically saying like, no, the gods are not on your side right now. Yeah. And what you choose to do, like, defines what happens, essentially. This is all your own making kind of a thing. Just the way that scene is set up and the dialogue there, I thought was really, really good. Yeah. Like, there are moments of this where the script is actually really, really well thought out. And, but for me, that kind of mood didn't really carry through. That was the first moment I felt like, ooh, dude, you're doomed kind of a thing. Like, it's sort of, but...
Yeah, and speaking on that part, you were talking about the dialogue, and it was interesting to note that the way Hera described his prophecy was as if Zeus had told him, like, hey, you're doomed. This is what's going to happen. You're doomed. But Pelias' interpretation of that is, Zeus is telling me that I need to take care of this because this is my doom. Which is, that perspective change is kind of interesting.
Zeus is forcing my hand in a very weird way. He's making me murder all these people.
Did you guys get the impression that they sort of took the way the gods operated and kind of put more of a Christian twist on it?
I hadn't thought about that.
It felt a little more like... the gods say this thing, but you misinterpreted, and all the sins that you essentially do are by your own making, not the will of the gods, which is kind of against the way the gods are actually represented. They're a little more hands-on and petty than represented.
I mean, you just look at, I guess, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which I know are fictional works, but...
Right.
They have, people just killing people because they've been inconvenienced by the other gods. Right. And they're like, well, I'm going to kill your kid now but you know,
In a way, I guess Percy Jackson got that right.
a little bit.
Because the gods hated each other, and they were constantly interfering.
Yeah, but Irina is right. They totally portray the gods in this a little more Christian. They're more benefactors than in it for their own.
We are here to help you, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like they can help and intervene, but it's limited their interaction with people. Like it's as if they have to stay hands off most of the time because it is the people's will, not the gods.
Yeah, except the gods in Greek mythology are very hands-on.
Anyway, Jason goes off on his quest to get to the Golden Fleece, and he takes with him Hercules, Hylas, the traitor that he doesn't know is a traitor yet, and a whole smattering of other people. What do we think about the assembly of this crew, the Argonauts, and the first leg of this trip or journey?
These guys, I mean, they don't look like the biggest and the strongest of the people you could find.
Not only do they not look it, they aren't.
I actually really like Hercules and Hylas, and I wish there was more of that dynamic.
Well, Hylas, the smart one, ends up doing something a little not smart.
He skips the disc.
No, we're talking about later
when he goes to get the spear.
He's supposed to be the one that's like, but it's not just brute strength that's great. And then he uses his mind in what I would claim is a foolish way. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
He skips the disc, and then later he's decided, you know what? Hercules left his
spear,
his brooch pin.
It was
on the field.
It's the
Let me run back
of
under
friendship.
Yeah. Fair enough. He wanted.
He and Hercules really hit it off.
Hercules was literally zero help in this whole story. Like he literally gets them in more trouble and then stays on the island.
It's almost as if this story was just here to leave him on an island to start his own journey. Yeah, which he does, right, Noah?
Yep, that is actually what happens.
I do want to shout out the Argo, which they actually built this ship. It cost like 1/10 of the budget, I read. And there's a lot of beautiful shots on the ocean. This was kind of shot in Italy, because Greece was apparently too gray looking and Italy had a more dynamic kind of, color palette.
You're not Greece enough for us, Greece. We're going to Italy.
I mean, you're close enough.
The boat's really cool, although I do question how large the sails are. I imagine they should be a little bigger for a boat that looks that hefty.
I mean, probably, but I'm kind of overlooking that. I think
it's beautiful. So I will say that.
The thing that's really well done about this movie is sets. Like the sets always look really good. Like I love all the detail in the background when you're not distracted by their really short togas, but the boat is one of those features where it's just so cool to see handmade work, and that's something I kind of miss these days with the oversaturation of special effects. I get its purpose, but I miss a lot of the handcrafted work. Yes.
There's a happy medium there, and almost no one does it.
There's a perfect marriage, for sure.
Yeah. And also in my research, this is where I learned that this apparently, alongside the spaghetti western, Italians were also big into making these kind of mythological movies. And this movie was trying to actually answer to that with something different, because they had the typical muscle men playing the main heroes like Hercules and all that, and it was kind of, I don't know if cheesy is the word, but it was no, we don't want to do that. We want to have kind of more realistic looking characters that are more down to earth, and that's why the Hercules here isn't this just huge strapping oiled up hero.
Beefcake.
I actually really liked the way they did that. I agree. I think Hercules is almost a perfect casting for its time.
But and just really different enough muscular bad boys.
And it was just different enough from what you think of when you think of Hercules. Where I'm like, okay, this is a different take.
I imagined everybody from 300 in this movie.
Well, yeah, this is supposed to be an aged Hercules who's kind of past his prime, but of course he's still super strong.
What's this guy's name? It's his last name is Green, but I remember reading that he he was often cast in these kind of roles because of his large build. He was larger than most average men, so he was always kind of playing that big kind of beefy role.
Nigel
He's
Green.
like
by the way.
Nigel Green. There
He's
you go.
like a weird mixture of Alan Tudyk and Tormund from
I can
Game of
see that.
Thrones.
I could see the
that.
Tormund more than
Yeah.
Tudyk, but I could.
Well, if you look at his eyes and his nose,
Like if you shave
it's-
that beard off and
or
shorten his hair.
expressions. Yeah.
interesting. I
But-
definitely see the Tormund.
I think I want to go back to your comment on his relationship with Hylas. That's his name. Those two, I thought this would be a great dynamic. Like of all the people that have been cast on the Argo, they at least had the most chemistry
And personality,
Like you
too.
were expecting that to go further.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they leave so soon, you're just like,
I was like,
oh,
really? That's it? That's all. That's all. Of it?
oh no.
But again, this is a fast-moving story.
is, it is.
Big moments that would take 30 minutes in any other movie take 5 minutes here.
But I think while it is rushed a little bit, they did a good job putting it together.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Although I would much prefer this to be about 3 movies.
Of course you would. I mean, I
How
actually
about
believe you
7?
there.
And I actually agree with you.
How about seven?
Yeah.
7 movies.
Honestly, with how vast this story could be, with how much happens in it, it could be 7 movies.
Pirates of the Caribbean could have taken something like Greek mythology and spread it out into 5 to 7 movies.
Mythology.
I would rather have Pirates stay with just 1 movie.
Yeah. Yep, I know your opinion is widely known on the Pirates movies.
And if you
Not
don't know,
widely
you can
enough.
always go back and listen to our Pirates episodes.
And that's one of our most argumentative episodes about the quality of movies.
Not the first one.
The second and third one, specifically.
Yeah.
Let's move on with the story. Hera guides Jason to the Isle of Bronze, but warns him to take nothing but provisions. However, Hercules steals a brooch pin the size of a javelin from a building filled with treasure and surmounted by a gigantic bronze statue of Talos. The statue comes to life and attacks the Argonauts. Jason again turns to Hera, who tells him to open a large plug on Talos' heel to release the giant's ichor. Talos falls to the ground, crushing Hylas and hiding his body. Hercules refuses to leave until he ascertains the fate of his friend. The other Argonauts are unwilling to abandon Hercules, so Jason calls upon Hera again. She informs them that that Hylas is dead and that Zeus has other plans for Hercules. Hera directs Jason to seek out Phineus, who has been blinded and is tormented by harpies for misusing Zeus's gift of prophecy. After the Argonauts capture and cage the harpies, Phineus tells them how to reach Colchis by sailing between the clashing rocks. He also gives Jason an amulet of the sea god Triton. The Argonauts see another ship trying to pass through the other way, only to be crushed and sunk when the clashing rocks smash together. Upon Jason's refusal to turn back, when the Argo tries to row through, the ship appears doomed as well. In despair, Jason throws Phineus's amulet into the water, whereupon Triton rises up and holds the rocks apart long enough for the Argo to pass. Upon clearing the rocks, the Argonauts rescue a survivor from the other ship lost, the wonderfully deadly, attractive Medea.
And deadly attractive.
Wait, how is she deadly?
The wonderful and deadly attractive. It just says deadly
Oh,
attractive.
deadly. Okay, I was confused.
Medea. I keep wanting to say Medea from like I just think of the Tyler Perry movies.
Medea?
Medea.
Who is the high priestess of Colchis.
Ah, yes, Medea.
All right, let's talk about the Isle of Bronze. This is my favorite part of the movie. The way, first of all, Hercules and Hylas going off on their own to kind of see what this island has in terms of, goodies.
A fool's errand indeed.
But they come upon all these statues of titans and gods, and that's one of that shot of them walking.
Oh, it's so cool.
Is one of the things I distinctly remember seeing, where you've got the statues in the foreground and in the background, and they're all like perfectly set up, and it just looks really cool. And then you see these little specks of the two Hercules and Hylas like walking up to the Talos statue. They don't know it's Talos, but they open up the bottom. And there's a door that's open, and there's treasures strewn about.
Right.
And of course, they take some stuff and do exactly what Hera did not want them to do, and Talos comes to life. And this is when like the movie kicked it into high gear for me, and I was like, okay, I see why this movie has stood the test of time in some regards. Because
Yeah.
even though you acknowledge it as stop motion, like that's not, it doesn't break it. Like the illusion is broken. I see exactly what they
Right.
did to do this, but it is so well realized, and the sense of scale and the forced perspective is, I think,
Oh, yeah.
expertly done.
Well, the thing that shines through is the concepts, not necessarily the full-on delivery.
Yeah.
Because in this movie, he has such good concepts of how, or he has such a vision on how he wanted things to be portrayed, and I think the vision is exactly perfect for Greek mythology.
Yeah.
So he, as far as Ray Harryhausen goes, he has one of those fundamental rules down as far as any animator goes, no matter what field it is, and that is knowing the object that you're animating and trying to make it real in a physical space.
Like blending.
Yeah. So like they're not all going to move exactly the same. And with this creature Talos, or I guess he's a colossus, right, Noah?
I
Titan.
assume that he's a colossus.
Or like a
So-
demigod. I thought he was a
but-
titan.
Part of me was thinking that maybe he was. Yeah, I think they did say that he was a titan of some sort. But at the same time, that wouldn't quite make sense. I think titans are way more powerful.
He might have been a statue of a Titan. But
I assumed that he was a colossus or some
Yeah.
construct of Hephaestus.
so it's just this concept of also another thing they do so well is matching the lighting. That
Yeah.
I think that really does sell it for me. Like the lighting on the creature matches the scenery so well.
And another thing they do
Yeah.
is the sound design and the way it's moving. They know that it kind of has this herky-jerky
Yeah.
look, and they're like, that's the part that audiences will think doesn't look realistic.
Right.
So when they add this creaky metal sound, like this thing is like kind of struggling to
Right.
move properly, it sells the illusion of it not looking as fluid as you would imagine it to.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt. I just looked it up real quick. Talos is a construct by Hephaestus. He straight up
Cool.
is meant to be an
He's just
automaton
a,
built by him.
A guy
Interesting.
guarding the island.
Sorry to interrupt.
Cool. No, I'm glad you did. That's good to know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just this is one of the more protracted sequences that I was like, oh, I'm surprised this is going on as long as it is, because I thought like they would only have the time or the budget to show a moving Talos
Yeah.
for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But no, you get a full
Because-
blown sequence of him.
Like for anyone that doesn't really look too much into stop motion animation, that is freaking tedious work.
Yes.
Like it takes forever, and especially Harryhausen, he is very meticulous about how he does it, and that's why his always stand out so much, because like this character obviously needs to be a little more stilted because he's made of bronze. But the rest, they are so smooth, and that's because he takes so many images of just very tiny movements to make that effect.
Yeah. The only thing that I wish they had done a little better is just with their sound effects, because
I actually kind of liked the creakiness of Talos.
well, the thing is they get the creakiness, but they completely eliminated all the noises of his feet hitting the ground.
Oh yeah.
So he's this huge hulking thing, and he has ninja footsteps.
You would imagine big booms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And based on how clunky he is, there
Yeah.
would be big booms. But there's probably some reason why they couldn't do that, or I'm not sure. I know they
No, but you're right.
emphasized a bit of the score in a lot of their action scenes, maybe to cover up sound effects, but I'm not.
I
too
think
certain.
just this scene always stood out in my mind from watching as a kid, and it's because of that. Like as a kid, you get that dread if you had seen the movie before, where you're like, "Don't take it, don't leave with it," you know. And then the turning of the head, I always remember, and just that hollow look, like it's frightening. And but I must have watched this several times as a kid because that really stuck in my brain.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with him for sure.
Do you have any thoughts on this, AJ?
No, I mean, in the original story, they actually had this on the way back, but the movie actually didn't give us a way back at all, so.
Oh, yeah, there was no way back. It was just, we finished our quest and we're done.
Yeah, you got the girl, so it's all good.
But here's the thing. They never finished the quest. Actually, the real
You know
quest.
why? Because they were banking hard on doing a sequel about the
Yeah.
return journey to this, which is a lot of people
A shame.
don't realize.
I wonder what that bodes for, if this is honorable or dishonorable.
We'll see.
So as far as Talos goes, one of the things in the plot line you were reading there that I disagree with is that they said Hera said to undo the plug on his ankle. Like, no, she really didn't. She was actually.
She just said, focus on the ankles.
Yeah, go for the ankles.
Or like, why don't you use your brain? He's
Gosh.
like, I don't want to. And she's like,
I know. It was like, no, my spear don't do nothing to bronze.
And it's our boy Jason.
Yeah, he's a clever boy.
He's a clever man.
I do love the ending to this scene though, where Talos is kind of like 1 foot on each kind of peninsula. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Whatever it is.
yeah, just on each side of the mountain, and there's the narrow passage that they have
Yeah.
to pass through under his legs. That whole scene is so cool and really evoked Lord of the Rings to me.
Oh, yeah.
That
yeah,
one particularly.
I see the comparison for sure.
Okay.
Although that is something that is in the Lord of the Rings books, though. So perhaps Tolkien took inspiration
is.
somehow, but
Well, yeah. I think, honestly, the sense of scale, like understanding how to portray a world that has such massive characters and creatures in it. And there are many shows from this time period where they would represent something that typically you would think of as larger than life, but it's usually just a guy in a costume kind of a
Yes,
thing, you know? So this kind of thing was groundbreaking. And I know they had been doing like monster films before that where they were like decimating cities and things like that. So like Harryhausen wanted to move on to mythology because there's just a plethora of monsters to play with there.
This was actually the same year Godzilla vs. Kong came out. This was like the third Godzilla movie. So yeah, you're right. They had been doing Kongs and Godzillas. Time to hit up the Greek mythology. We can do this now. You know?
yeah, this was that prime time for this kind of stop motion.
Yeah.
Like we had Avatar, well,
what?
a long time ago, 2008, but that was that time for
2010.
cute.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it 2010?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. But we had that time where it was just, this CGI huge, like,
Yeah.
oh, look at this beautiful spectacle of CG.
Right.
Masterclass.
But at this time, it was stop motion.
You are kind of right. It's almost like there's a breakthrough in special effects where you will see a movie or two where it's strictly about utilizing those special effects. The story may kind of like be pushed to the wayside, but it's more the spectacle of look what we can do now kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, not to jump to
And-
the end, but the skeletons at the end were revolutionary.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. And they're
I mean, that was the
always
highlight of the
referenced
movie.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking like Talos and the skeletons are probably the two.
What about the Hydra?
The Hydra's cool too, but like
He's
for me,
kind of weak
I
sauce.
think the main issue with the Hydra was not in the way the Hydra was, and more so with the way they had Jason interacting with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
He's
hard to actually make somebody really interact with a
Well, they
stop
did
motion.
it. They did it with the skeletons.
all right. Well,
We'll get there.
we will definitely get to the Hydra here pretty soon. So they defeat Talos by pulling out the plug on his ankle, and the ichor spews out, and he falls on Hylas, who's trying to take the brooch pin, like the idiot that he is. And Hercules stays behind too, because I guess Zeus has plans for him. That's like the explanation. So then they face the clashing rocks. That's what's next, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sexy Poseidon.
No, sorry. They go to Phineas, that guy who is beset by harpies.
Oh, that's right, because he tells them about the clashing rocks. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're bad at this.
It's okay. There a lot kind of happens in the middle of this movie, and the sequence of it almost isn't important to me. So I have all of these sequences starkly in my mind, but it's like the order's all messed up.
And I think it's because you are kind of used to a certain character progression where they have these lessons they learn, but in this one it's more like, no, we just need to overcome this next obstacle physically. You know?
So Phineas
blindly follow the gods to the gods are dead.
Yeah.
So Phineas, who's blind because he told everyone Zeus's secrets, and the harpies. What do we think about all this here?
Wait, so the reason he was blinded was because he told people secrets?
He has the gift of prophecy, but he's not supposed to there's certain things he's not supposed to say.
He misused it.
Meanwhile, Hera's like, go to the guy who is blinded for telling prophecies and ask him
Well,
for
the
a
thing
prophecy.
is, like, he knows he still has that quality, but I think it's a problem with this movie is you feel like there are a lot of questions you have that go unanswered, and you feel like you should know more about who these people are in mythology, but I don't.
I want to know what this guy's day-to-day is. Just like, all right, I'm going to make food, and the harpies are... It's 2 o'clock up, the harpies are here.
Yeah, this blind guy who can never eat because of these harpies.
Yeah. Shakes a stick at them the whole day. Who knows how long this has been happening.
My mindset on this was, okay, why is he setting the table if he knows they're all going to be there?
He isn't, but there are women that came and set the table for him.
Oh.
But it isn't really explained why.
Regardless, if I were him, I'd track those whoever it is bringing him food and just wait for them to have the food ready there and just
so I think it might Noah, you made a query about this, I guess, or you had an assumption that you made, and it was that well, actually, who was it? Maybe it was David. That he's presented with this food and then the harpies come just as part of the punishment. So he's like, he can reach this food, but only enough to kind of like barely taste it, and then
I was saying,
subjected to this torment again.
I was thinking it would be amusing if, the gods were like, here, have this food, and they're like, ha!
I think that's exactly right, actually. I think that's what is happening.
Now that is a petty god move.
Yeah, but it's exactly what they would do.
You want some food? Too bad.
No
food for you. No soup for you.
I thought the harpies were actually pretty well done too.
Oh yeah.
Like they're a little too blue for my tastes, but
blue's my favorite color.
I am looking at this scene and wondering how exactly they pulled it off.
Wires.
Yeah. No, it is stop motion again.
It is. It's stop motion, but I think they're also using wires.
Yeah. I'd like to see the behind the scenes on this.
There was a specific scene where one is hanging onto a pillar and you can see strings coming off of it. And I was like, they're
probably wires.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, there are so many parts in this where this stop motion looks really good to us, and we're also viewing this on high definition TVs. Yes. So imagine watching this at the time.
I know, it probably looked groundbreaking.
It probably looked amazing.
No idea what CGI even is.
Yeah. And a lesser movie would have these stop motion creatures, interacting, or they'd just be flapping about on the screen, but you would never see one touch the real actor.
Right.
But in this, there's a scene where the harpy grabs the shawl that the guy's wearing, and he kind of rolls out of it, and the shawl falls to the ground.
Well, they try to sell it, and
I'm like, no, they literally made them interact, which always really kind of sells the special effect more.
And again, going back to Lord of the Rings, that's a quality that they tried to carry over as well. Is when you have something interacting in the space of actors, it helps to have them actually touch or interact with the same objects that they're touching, because visually it's magic, essentially.
I think Corridor
you
Crew
see it work.
touched on this a little bit with the intro to the first Fellowship of the Rings, where Gandalf is interacting with Bilbo, but they obviously had two separate sets. And
no talk about Lord of the Rings.
Relevant.
It's okay. We can always bring it back when we talk about Lord of the Rings in the future.
So Gandalf, I think, in that moment is not interacting with the actual Bilbo, but he does, when they combine them, and he actually picks up a hat, I think, and has it by his side. And corridor crew's like, how did they do that? But then they had like freeze frame and you could see where it changes.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like that was a very similar thing in a 1963 film, you know?
Yes.
Very much so. And I do want to defend you, David, because I think it is very relevant to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
No,
in the context of this movie.
It's definitely relevant, but my mindset is that, like, man, this is some juice for when we do Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Well, the
one
thing
day.
A 50 episode
when we
ordeal.
do Lord of the Rings, there's so much content out there already. We might miss something anyway.
Well, we're gonna. I've prepared.
Okay, so they help Phineas. They somehow have this extremely massive net that they're able to cover this whole, cover the whole temple. Then they cut the net and it ensnares the harpies. And then the blind man is like, "Oh, I'll help you." So he tells them how to get through or he directs them towards the clashing rocks. And then Jason asks Hera for help on how to get through there, and they ultimately make it through after witnessing a ship capsize before them. Another really cool sequence to me.
Oh yeah,
Especially when Triton slowly emerges out of the
I thought
water.
it was
Yeah.
Poseidon.
It's Triton.
Triton.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was exciting too.
No, it's Triton. He's a mermaid. He's got
Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, and just how he slowly emerges from the water and just holds back the cliff and puts his hand on the other
Yeah.
one and lets them pass under. I was like,
Such a
"Dang."
good
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where you can see, like, this is definitely a miniature set, and how well that still works, because Lord of the Rings still used miniature sets and makes it look good. So, like,
Yeah.
you can see how that's operating, and
Yeah.
it's such a cool effect,
Yeah.
and in theory is quite simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
The thing that I love about these kinds of movies, Jason and the Argonauts, we haven't talked about Clash of the Titans yet, but that one and
All the Harryhausen-esque movies.
and also the Odyssey, which I guess technically is a miniseries.
Yeah.
They just embody Greek mythology in a way, even though they're dated. They just the way that everything
with
is
white
shot,
boys.
and and their depictions of mythology are just always really interesting to see.
Yes.
By the way, Triton is the son of Poseidon, which I
Yeah.
just looked up. I didn't know that.
So you're close enough.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
basically.
And Daddy to
Tri-
Ariel, the Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. King Triton.
That's where he was when he was gone.
Which, does that make him like a half brother to Percy Jackson?
Ariel has a lot of treasures. Is it a different kind of daddy than we
Oh, no.
are
Don't.
supposed to think?
Some
We
doodads,
won't
like some
go
doodaddies.
there. Doodaddies.
Sorry.
What?
That's what I'm here for.
All right, this is also when they save Medea from the previous ship that tried to pass through the clashing rocks. And this lady, or this actress, who only has 33 minutes in this movie, is actually second billed. It's Nancy Kovac.
She has that transatlantic accent,
Yeah.
you know. I always love when they're carrying her through the waters, like, make sure you don't ruin the makeup, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, keep her head above the water.
When are they going to frickin' change all mythology from a British voice to
Greek?
Greek? Yeah, at least have a Greek accent.
At least Assassin's Creed did it.
I don't mind so much.
Because you're used to
Yeah,
it.
I'm used to it.
But the Greek accent
It is
is
a little
really,
strange.
really cool.
See,
Yeah.
in the moment, I'm not used to it, but then whenever I think about it, it kind of irks me because it's like, why?
I want to hear you do a Greek accent.
I cannot. I can't even think
Try.
about how it is. No.
I'd do it.
Do it then.
Feed me a gyro.
Feed me a gyro.
Yeah, I'm a newborn Kentucky Fried Greek.
You're
Perseus,
newborn
kill that Medusa for me.
for me.
All right, so you're saying we want a remade one with a country accent?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Give me some of that pita bread and hummus.
That'd be super rewatchable.
I mean, it might be. I would watch it.
Is this Cowboys and Aliens again?
Jebediah and Jedediah. First and second build.
It does
Jason
bring
Dye.
up again an interesting point though, because when we do watch anything about mythology, these are supposed to be taking place in, Greece, Italy, all the Mediterranean essentially, and you are so used to hearing just British or American actors going through these parts, but I never actually really think about what it's like for people from Greece, where it's like, yeah, that's our history, but
Those freaking
it doesn't sound anything like us.
Yeah.
So any thoughts on her in this movie? I guess we can talk more about her in the next portion because she's more of a significant player in the final act of this movie. So let's just finish up the story.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Finally nearing Colchis, Acostus challenges Jason's authority and engages him in a duel. Disarmed, Acostus jumps into the sea and disappears. Jason and his men land and accept an invitation from King Aeetes to a feast. Unknown to them, Acostus has warned Aeetes of Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece. Aeetes has the unwary Argonauts imprisoned, but Medea, having fallen in love with Jason, helps him and his men escape. Acostus tries to steal the fleece first, but is killed by its guardian, the Hydra. Jason is able to kill the beast and take the fleece. Medea is mortally wounded by an arrow, but Jason heals her with the fleece. Aeetes then sows the Hydra's teeth and prays to the goddess Hecate. Hecate Light, if you want to say it.
Yeah, like Tecate. Tecate light.
7 armed skeletons, the children of Hydra's teeth, emerge from the ground. Jason, Phalaris, and Castor hold them off, while Medea and Argus escape back to the Argo with the fleece. After a prolonged battle, in which his companions are killed, Jason escapes by jumping into the sea. And he, Medea, and the surviving Argonauts begin their voyage home to Thessaly. On Olympus, Zeus tells Hera that, while Jason can enjoy his triumph, he is not done with Jason. Okay, so this girl, Medea, falls in love really quickly and decides that Jason is her man and she's going to help him get that fleece. And this is after they've kind of...
Hey, back in the day, they didn't have Tinder, so this is the best they had.
He has been at sea for quite a while.
No, Triton uses too many fish. Not enough fish.
No.
That's it.
All right. As far as she goes, I think that I didn't believe her falling for Jason. And maybe it's partially because I don't think Jason's anyone worth falling for in this movie. But it's just
all right, to be fair, you see a frickin' captain of a ship who's all like bronze-skinned, tanned by the sun.
Saves you.
Saves you from the water. Is the commander.
Pretty nice.
Is the
From the
commander
other side
of
of
the
the
ship.
world.
And just essentially commanded Triton to hold up frickin' mountains for him.
So she's in it for the power. Like she wants the fame of being with a guy who can do that.
I mean, I'm just saying.
She wants a little bit of strain.
Also, I don't know
also he's the heir to Thessaly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it would work for a priestess of Hecate, but I seem to remember that most priestesses are like celibate, like they've given themselves to the temple.
She bailed on all of that.
It is kind of like that, and there are a lot of interesting themes as far as human beings kind of going through this film, but they don't really focus on it that much. It's more of a stamp, It's like, all right, this is the archetype here, this is that, and you just kind of plug and chug sort of with the characters. But I'm always a fan of personal struggles, and kind of character growth and people kind of warring with themselves sort of. So I don't really get a lot of that from this, and I think that is a time period based thing, and the genre that this is. It's more about the journey than the people.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not always my interest. I do enjoy the journey, but I kind of wish that since there are so many good points in these characters that could be kind of hewn from the story a little more, it makes me sad.
Yeah, she's the granddaughter of Helios. Like, she's actually the one in the original story that takes down Talos.
Right.
Like, she's,
really?
As a priestess of Hecate, she's like basically a necromancer.
Yeah.
So she's got all these
Interesting.
magical
That's
powers
crazy.
and abilities and stuff. So
Yeah, I
That's
didn't get
kinda
any of
my-
that from the movie.
Yeah, my main criticism of this movie is it's, I guess, a product of the times.
Right.
They cut out the depth, and basically the moral of the story ends up being the guy gets the girl.
Yeah.
Cue credits.
Yeah.
This movie is definitely 1963 fan service.
Yeah.
With, the dancers wearing super skimpy outfits, and as you noted, they had their belly buttons covered up for some reason.
An interesting fact about that.
Yeah.
Actually, around this time, the kind of I Dream of Jeannie went through this problem too, but in television, you weren't allowed to see women's belly buttons. It wasn't appropriate. And I think with this movie, they were trying to keep it from being like something a little more R or X rated.
Yeah.
And
See their ankles though.
Yeah, you can see you can see quite a bit,
We have a
but for
different
some
kind of
reason,
naked.
Hercules and Hylas, that brooch was commonality in them.
So, like, a little fact about I Dream of Jeannie, she had an outfit that revealed her belly button, but then the producers of the show, or they wanted that cut out. They had them redo her outfit so it would cover the belly button because that was too far.
But
so
yeah, it's just so strange to me. They're kind of rushing the story along really fast, and yet they're thinking, okay, let's set aside this 10 minutes for skimpy girls dancing. I think we need that.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway.
Gotta sell those tickets.
But yeah, I know it sells an image of the kingdom, and it does make sense.
Well, I think it's also trying to portray the goddess a little more because it's sultry, it's kind of deadly and mysterious because she's supposed to be this goddess of sorcery and witchcraft and all things kind of supernatural, I guess, that we would associate with. But so I get that, and even her idol looks, it's like three-faced and kind of feral, So I think there's something about this land being a little more sinister, I guess, that they're trying to portray here.
I could see that.
Yeah, Hecate has always been. I thought it was. I always think that this one's a weird goddess to end on because I never thought of her as a huge, important goddess, but in this one she is.
Yeah, Hecate was like big before, and then the new meta, so to speak, came along with the new pantheon, and so that's where like the separation on the two sides of the world are. So they're like kind of different cultures because of their own, devotion, I guess.
I only know the basics about her character, but is she supposed to be huge in Greek mythology?
Originally, way back, she was almost like the goddess of the underworld. So, she spans quite a bit of stuff. The sun or the moon, night, shadows, the dead, necromancy.
Yeah.
And then, things kind of evolve a little bit, but...
That's really interesting. I only ever knew that she was, she had like the kind of three versions of herself, that being, the young maid, I guess a more middle-aged woman, and then kind of an old crone. And
not just an old lady.
Actually, honestly, what would you call
a hag?
And a very old lady with weird necromantic powers.
Well, also these when you do talk about mythology, a lot of the representations are subject to the time in which they're talked about. So one representation of a god or goddess could have changed just based on those years that passed. Like they kind of shift a little bit in representation depending on what part of Greek mythology you're focusing on, or
and region,
just that era. Yeah, that region as well.
Crete to Athens to Sparta. They're all going to be different.
Right, exactly. So it's a lot of those representations are probably true at some point during that time.
So let's talk about the Hydra sequence and when they actually get he gets the fleece, and what's his name? Pete, the traitor guy.
Pete.
Wait,
Acostus.
I know this. A Chadstus.
There he goes. He was a Chad, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You'll never make it out of the bay.
That sword fight, though.
Give credit to David for that one. He came up with the
Chad Achilles.
Chad Achilles.
Chad Achilles.
But Hercules wasn't a Chad.
He was honorable but stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I gotta find this guy's name.
Acastus.
Okay.
We said that already.
Oh, it didn't start with a P then. Okay, go for it. Yeah,
So
Acastus is killed.
Yeah, he's always like supporting Jason at every difficult decision. Then suddenly, there's this insult, and it's like, you're going to die for that. And then they have this, the sword fight where they just basically hit each other's swords.
Yeah, and he falls and he jumps in the water.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
So the Hydra sequence, though, where they're getting the fleece, do we think this is well executed?
I think the Hydra looks good.
Yeah.
But as far as the interaction with it, it leaves something to be really
I really like how they actually did the fleece when you first see it.
Yeah,
like, in
fleece
the
is
trees,
good. I
it's
agree.
glowing. It's upon closer inspection, when you see it up close, you're just like, oh, this is kind of just a, that's
Just a shaggy blanket.
Yeah.
But the way that scene is set up, you're like, okay, cool. They actually gave the golden fleece this kind of distinct look, and it's like, yeah, I can see like why this is mystical or magical.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Hydra fight was a bit of a wet blanket on all compared to some of the other impressive sequences that we've seen in this movie. It's still cool to see all those heads like moving in different directions. That must have been a pain in the butt to animate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
But it's over too short. I feel like it's a pretty easy fought battle. Hydra didn't do a very good job of protecting the fleece.
I thought it was better than
Yeah.
the Harpies, personally.
I agree. I think it was better than the Harpies, maybe.
I still like the Harpies, though, because, I don't know.
Because he likes the Harpies.
I just like the Harpies.
I do think the Hydra should have been a little bigger, but I guess that's hard to do.
Reese, you kind of look like a Harpies kind of guy.
Okay,
like
I don't know what that means.
It means you're big on Harpies.
You got
Are
lots
you
of
trying to
Harpies.
make an STD joke?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should
which,
see
by
a
the
doctor
way-
about that.
Yeah. Or you can see the new demigod. What was it? What HPV is?
No, it was
STDs.
It was STDs.
Yeah, there we go.
How could you get that?
I couldn't
After
remember.
you literally said STD.
I was thinking HPV for some reason. We're going on the wrong way.
Okay, but fortunately, to pick up, the ball where the Hydra dropped it, we have this impressive skeleton sequence when they're running off with the fleece. Medea gets shot in the back. She's healed by the fleece, and all of Aegistus's men gather up the teeth from the Hydra, and Aegistus throws them in the soil, and sure enough, the skeletons start emerging from the ground. And
What about throws them in the soil? It seems like a flower girl in a wedding, just kind of like, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, they're just fling, fling.
I guess, I don't know. But man, what a cool action sequence. And what's insanely impressive about this sequence, which apparently took 4 months to, conceive.
It's insane.
Because all the skeletons all of their fingers had to be moved. Like
Right.
it wasn't just like these set hands. Like the hands weren't just one piece. Like it was like each hand had 5 fingers that had to move on their own, and he had to move these meticulously. And also, so they had the footage first of these actors just fighting an unseen enemy. So he had to, against the footage, make it look like they were making contact with these skeletons, make them look like they existed in the same, world. And I think they really pulled it off.
They really did a good job.
The skeletons are cool looking.
Oh yeah, the best part about, I think actually this is the best job they did with pairing the real world with the stop motion one, and that the skeletons looked like they were actually there, and they looked like they were actually physically interacting with the
and
humans.
the movement is so smooth. Like you can kind of see how it was matching the actual actors that were there representing the skeletons during the sword fight. Like it all worked so well.
Yep. The sound design too, the clashing of the swords, like all of that, I think is well implemented. So it's like, yes, they're sharing the same space. they're interacting with one another, which sells the illusion of the special effect.
Yeah.
Again, something that just, like, I totally get why this movie was revolutionary for, its time.
They had that kind of cool touch of, at the end, Jason jumping into the water and the skeletons chase him off and they also fall off.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool because their only mission is to kill him.
Yeah, that is their goal.
So they just leap off with him.
Yeah.
Wait, so you're saying they were focused on the phalanx of the phalanx?
The phalanx of the phalanx?
That's a... Phalanx or your finger
That's a
bones.
formation. That's a formation, right?
Yeah.
Although it is
Formation,
kind of...
military formation, and your finger bones.
Yep.
Yeah,
this good one.
It's a pun.
Anyway, no, it was, they were in lockstep, and the joint of the motion of the skeletons as well as the live actors, it was blended pretty well. It was good.
Yeah. 1963. Again, we have to, like, remind ourselves, like...
Yeah.
63.
This next level for this time.
If you have any lunar landing people that don't believe in it, then have them take a look at the CG at the time.
Yeah.
And
or the special effects. Yeah.
the special effects that they had at the time. Have them look at this.
Yeah.
Well, people always reference 2001: A Space Odyssey. They're like, Kubrick could have been a part of it. Like, no, he really couldn't have. Yeah.
But have you seen Gumby?
Now
Yeah.
that's some stop motion.
Good point. All right, so they begin their return journey after escaping Colchis. A journey that we do not get to see, but it's kind of like almost a happily ever after. It's very abrupt, but that's your end. And that's one of my complaints. This movie just really cuts off. Like, I wanted to see the resolution of the story.
Yeah.
I didn't realize because this movie did fly by. I thought, in my head, I anticipated a 3-hour movie. So when I was watching this, in my head, I thought we were about halfway through, So then when they get to them talking about Jason's only just beginning, her story is just beginning, I was like, oh, cool. So we're going to get into it. And it's like the end.
Like we don't get to see what happens with Pelias, like the whole setup of this movie. Like, it's just left there hanging. It's one of those things where it's like, they definitely kind of thought they were gonna push forward with more of these movies. Even though when you think of Jason and the Argonauts, you're like, no, that was like a
classic.
A classic. No way that movie needed or wanted a sequel. It's just kind of its own thing. But actually, there's a lot that's kind of left hanging here. Any final notes on the story before we move on?
I think we've about covered it.
Do you think he went this whole movie with one sandal?
That'd be funny. I'd like to analyze every scene. He's just a one
there it
sandal
is.
man.
That's just his thing.
Just one sandal.
How many diapers did Argos go through?
A lot.
I did look like every now and then I was like, are those just straight up tidy whities? Like, I can't tell. They looked like them.
it. There are a lot of guys just running around in their underwear. If you're into like middle-aged men walking around in their underwear, this might be your movie.
All right. With that said, let's close out the story portion of this podcast and take a quick break. On the other end, we will get into our reviews and numbered scores, get into what critics thought, do some box office numbers, and then talk about this wannabe franchise. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Are y'all ready to talk Jason and the Argonauts?
I am ready.
I Argo am.
All right, David, you've got our reviews there. You want to pull them at random? Mm-hmm. See what we've got here. I'm actually very curious on our scores for this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
First up is AJ
And what did he give it?
with a 7.
Well, first time going first in a while. We didn't even mention Cow-Eyed Hera.
That's right.
Blinking mast, or the figurehead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of ignored it.
I was like, that's cool. It's a neat little creation.
Remind you of those baby dolls where you like they blink when you move them.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a little creepy.
I think I could have done without the whole eye thing, but I did like the effect of her just kind of whispering to him. It kind of reminded me of Neverending Story, you know, with the oracles or the sphinxes or whatever they were, just kind of whispering to Atreyu.
Yeah.
So this was tough to judge just because of its age and, you know, it's not up to today's standards visually. But so I kind of judged it on storytelling where there's a lot of material for there to be told on this story with the Argonautica. And they kind of just chopped it off halfway through. I mean, they pulled Talos in on the first half, even though he's on the return journey. So I kind of dinged it quite a bit just because there's a lot left undone. And they just like, yeah, the guy gets the girl, the end, everybody's happy. But they forgot about why they started the journey in the first place.
Yeah, it did seem like they were ticking off check marks. Like, they're like, all right, they're here, they're there, they're there.
Yeah, and you could say, you know, okay, they don't have a lot of time. But then if you look at, say, Cleopatra, which was made in the same year which is over 4 years, 4 hours long.
Yeah.
But that movie, to me, stands out much more in my memory than this one does.
That one did have a massive budget, though. It was like a huge production.
Okay, well, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But there are others that, you know, this one kind of goes by the wayside because the story just kind of simultaneously felt to me stretched out, but also rushed. Mm-hmm. So I give a lot of credit to the visuals of it, the ahead of its time, especially with the skeleton scene and the special effects and that kind of thing. But I mean, it's not a standalone movie in my opinion. So it was good, you know, by the time, but I wouldn't choose it to watch again personally from this kind of the classic, I guess, perspective. So,
all right.
Next up, Irina with a 7.5.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way you do, AJ, where I love all the special effects, and that honestly is the only thing that's memorable about this movie from what I can remember as a kid. So I'm pretty sure I remember not knowing exactly who Jason was. That you never really get to know who these people are. So you can't really fight for them. It's mostly just the spectacle of these creatures showing up one by one. Whereas the story is kind of, I could care less. I mean, I couldn't care less what happens to him. That I don't feel much for these characters.
Irina says, show me the monsters.
Show me the monsters. And I'm fine with that from a superficial perspective. But if I think about watching this movie again, I probably would, but I would skip ahead to all the monster encounters instead of sitting through the entire film. So that I think that says a lot about storytelling. And I did try to put myself into this era, and still this movie comes short as far as storytelling goes because these characters don't really get to grow that much at all. And there were movies out at this time that excelled in that area. You can have special effects and a good story. I just think this weighed more heavily on the special effects side, which is not a problem to me because they created a stepping stone for future films to excel. So I think it is memorable and it's worthy of watching, but there are so many things that could be altered in order for this to be an instant classic. So I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough.
Next up, Reese with an 8.
I definitely agree with both of you so far, but I was maybe less bothered by the faults of this movie and more enchanted by kind of how much of a grand adventure it was.
Yeah.
And if there was something I didn't like about it, it would turn the page and there'd be something interesting around the next corner. And I would have liked more character development, particularly from Jason, who I feel like is the biggest knock against this film, unfortunately. I just think he's just a blank slate of a character.
The titular character.
Yeah, but at least he gets us from point A to B to C, which is what this movie is about. It's just going to these destinations and seeing these new incredible sights. And I was always at least invested in that sense of being like, oh, they started with Talos. That was so cool. What's going to happen next? And then you have the clashing mountains, and you have the harpies, and you have the Hydra, and then ultimately the skeletons. There's so many notable sequences in this movie. And yeah, it's definitely light on character and an interesting plot or story. But I was really invested in just the journey and kind of swept up in it.
Right.
But it is definitely flawed. It's a flawed classic that I think you can pick apart if you want to, or you can just decide to, just kind of go along with it. And I kind of decided, I'm going to go along with it. This movie would not hold up if it was released today, but through the lens of the 1960s, I think I totally understand why it has this following.
Can you imagine a modern take on this done right?
Well, that's why they made Clash of the Titans. There's the same kind of things.
Hang on, though. Like, if you had a modern take on this particular film, you would not have Harryhausen's work in there. It would not be the same.
Well, yeah, but you keep Harryhausen's work, but also add a modern take, and man, this could be really good if they focus on the story.
Argonauts by Wes Anderson.
I know it's fairly obvious. Obvious, but hand this to Peter Jackson, who's a big fan of this. It was one of his main inspirations to become a filmmaker. He would treat this with care.
Oh,
that's kind of what it was with Lord of the Rings too, where he was like, he was just waiting for someone to do it, and no one did.
Actually, he only did Lord of the Rings because his King Kong project fell through, which he ultimately got to do again because of Lord of the Rings.
Well, I know that, but it's just I remember him stating that he was always waiting for someone to do it, and then no one did. So he's like, well, I guess I'm going to be the one that does it.
Yeah.
And I can see him the same way. It's like, I was waiting for a remake of Jason, and no one did it. So you know what? Yeah. I'm doing it.
I'd love to watch that. I really would. And I know that just seems like the obvious choice. Oh, Peter Jackson can do it.
Right.
But for this, this would actually make sense.
You take the people that are most passionate about something, and they will normally do it justice.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that I could see. I would not be offended if they remade it. I think it's good enough, and it does stand on its own as this kind of cool, moment in time where special effects were really growing and turning into, being truly impressive. And I did enjoy this, but I would definitely watch a remake under the right circumstances.
Right.
Yeah, like take Ray Harryhausen's concepts, add in a
modern
better,
twist.
more realistic rendering of things.
Yeah.
And you could have something
really special.
Something really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's my review.
All right, next up is Noah with an 8.
Hey, I agree with Reese.
Sweet synergy.
I almost went with 8.
Yeah. It was really hard because I wanted to compare this to, I guess, some more recent movies, and maybe if I had done a direct... Well, the thing is, I had to consider more the time in which it was made, and I know that's, I guess, not the biggest factor in storytelling or movies in general, but for this one, I just thought, man, 1963, and they're able to pull off this. I think that's pretty spectacular, and
they could have easily decided, like, hey, let's just have Talos be this guy who's dressed up in a suit.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah,
it's like Star Trek when they fight monsters or just guys in rubber suits.
Yeah. I've always been kind of a fan of stop motion. Maybe not a fan, but I've appreciated it. If you've ever watched Kubo's so amazing. Of course, you guys have. But
all those stop motion, all the stuff.
Talking to the audience.
Leica, yes, thanks.
But I kind of you kind of overlook the fact that you can tell that it's stop motion just because the concepts are so cool, and like you said, Reese, the journey is nice. I like big journeys. I like grand adventures, and
big
journeys that I cannot lie.
I love how both of y'all.
I would not have ever made that connection.
I know. I wouldn't.
David and I
have
spend
missed
a
on what
lot
I
of
said
time
either.
together.
Yeah, I mean, may or may not be married or anything. But, anyways, I thought this was cool. I mean, there's a lot of kind of funny moments or moments that you can make fun of a little bit because, like, well, that wouldn't happen in real life. Or, well, I mean, I'm not talking about the fantasy elements. I'm talking about, like, people's reactions, by the way. Like, there are some kind of unnatural reactions to things. Physics are a little off every now and again. But, 1963, I kind of overlooked that. And at the end of the day, I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
8.
A lot of those exaggerated reactions just come from an evolution of filmmaking in general, where they were moving from silent film to ones where you can speak, you can become more realistic. It seems like they're slowly progressing to something that's more like real life.
Yeah, it was just the style in that time. So if you imagine that you're back in 1963 and you're watching this was probably the pinnacle of TV or film. So
it was the pinnacle, but
Or at
it
least
was,
up there.
It was up there.
Well, okay. What would you say was the very top thing? 63.
I mean, I Cleopatra.
No, that wasn't out yet. But
It's the
honestly,
same year.
I go back to Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like
So Wizard of Oz, I think. I mean, that predates this by what did you say? 30,
probably
20
like
years.
20, 30 years or
Holy
something.
Yeah.
crap!
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did an amazing job at the time. But I would say in this year, this is kind of at the top of the top.
Yeah, you're probably right there. Okay, so 8 from Noah. Last one.
Last is David, and I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet, just because I feel like we've all touched on a lot of good points that reflect mine.
Is this going to get the same score as your score for Mummy 2 and the Dragon Emperor?
gonna be close.
That
7.
being a 7 out of 10?
7 out of 10.
Yeah, it was a 7 out of 10. But no, I started off with an 8 on this one. I'm going to demote it to a 7.5.
So 0.5 higher.
Yes.
Than Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
They didn't see this one didn't have Brendan Fraser.
True.
Fair enough.
It didn't have Brendan Fraser, so you upped it.
I know.
0.5.
Wait, that does make it sound like no.
I know that's a joke, but Brendan Fraser is always a pleasure to watch.
He is a gift to society. All right. So, I mean, this thing was harder and harder to watch them. Like, I've seen it 3 times now.
Really?
Yeah. And it just got kind of more and more difficult. And even the first time, I feel like, especially with these through the lens of the 60s, it is hard to sort of judge. But there are other 60s movies that I love. It captivated me and it held me the whole movie. This didn't do that the same way. And I mean, I love the visual effects and I love what they did for film. But it does the storytelling just fails, and then I don't think there's a way to go around that perfectly. If they did a better job of trying to focus on the true story rather than him somehow getting the girl, that might have helped a little bit more. Maybe focus a little bit more on the acting. But in the end, it was kind of just like we're pacing through these looking for the monsters. And I think by the end, like the first time I watched it, I was starting to drift off a little bit towards the end. And watching it the second time, kind of the same thing. And
Okay, I find conflict with that getting the girl comment. Think about this time and age. Look at the competition. There was none.
What are you talking
He's
about?
Jason.
No,
is
I'm
like
talking-
the hottest guy in
Look,
town.
I think you're missing
you're
what I'm
like-
saying here. This is something AJ was talking about. It's the way they framed it.
I'm making a joke.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
David was ready to go with you there.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll fight you like a skeleton.
Fight me like a
Yeah,
skeleton.
did you
Well, the
see how
skeletons are really
high
cool.
his
So.
skirt was?
Yeah.
Provocative.
These
Fair
are all
enough.
very provocative. It didn't quite hit the same way for me, and I gave a lot of points to the cinematography and Harryhausen. So in the end, I think 7.5 is more than high enough, that this deserves.
Fair enough. Y'all were. Who was it? Irina? Were you the one that was comparing the Argonauts to kind of a group of frat boys.
Oh yeah, they definitely are.
Yeah. They're totally a group of frat boys, and they totally just went to this other person's party, and we're like, let's make a party.
Omega Pi Omega.
Let's get on this ship.
Yeah,
And forget to bring enough water for the trip.
dude, I love how 5 days in they're like, we're out of water, sir. Like, why didn't they think about this?
Hera.
But yeah, imagine, this is a frat party coming in on kind of a town in which no one ever goes there, and anything you could probably picture Medea's kind of interested in,
like a
the leader of the party.
Yeah.
I guess.
So, is that your review?
7.5.
7.5. Okay, AJ, you want to crunch those numbers?
Group average is a 7.6, which puts it in a 3-way tie with The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Jason and the Argonauts.
That's a good menage a trois right there.
So right next to Jason and the Argonauts.
Yep.
Perfect.
Hey, those are other two fantastical adventures that it's tied with.
I don't know how to, these are 3 different movies for me.
But
I can't
somehow
think
they
of
connect.
putting them next to each other.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I kind of I wish it was a little higher, but that's fine with me. That I can see.
Well,
how
I wish it was a little better.
Old
So
does
above
not
it
necessarily
is-
mean better.
Ghost in the Shell and King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. And below it is Blade.
All right, look, I'm forever a Legend of the Sword defender, so
And I'm a Ghost in the Shell defender.
yeah.
Honestly, I think when you get into the 7s, as far as our ratings, that's all the personal preference. That
It is.
what is above whatever else is there is based on our personal
That's
preference.
where someone had a little fun and was like, I'm going to give Legend of the Sword a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, honestly, retroactively, maybe not a 10, but I would upgrade that King Arthur.
It's a fun movie, and
it does not
get
enjoy
enough
that
credit,
movie.
even though it is not perfect.
Gosh, that score. Sorry. Go on.
I mean,
All
this
right,
movie
Chadwick.
did make David harder and harder, so that's what he said.
True.
I say a lot of things.
You do say a lot of things.
And I love you for it.
Please stop.
He's doing the film score, by the way.
Anybody?
Wait. Do you need your
No, I got
inhaler?
Calm down, Estides.
All right,
Joke's on you.
let's move on to critics.
No, I'm sorry. Calm your storm, Estides.
You can't shout out that line before the movie.
She just did.
I hate that.
Let's move on to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has an 89% from critics with an audience score of 79%.
That's higher than I thought it would be.
And on IMDb, this movie has a 7.3. So that's more in line with
right.
kind of our scores. So we line up more with the audience-based scores
Yeah.
than the critics here. So, box office. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Now, this I had to bring the inflation calculator back in.
Oh gosh, that'll be hard.
Yes. So this movie released on June 19th in 1963. The only significant releases surrounding it were HUD, starring Paul Newman, and that was 2 weeks before Jason and the Argonauts, and 2 weeks after Jason and the Argonauts, we had The Great Escape. The movie's budgeted at $3 million at the time, which translates to $26 million. So, let's give an inflated guess.
I think
as
it's
to what-
inflatuary.
Let's give an inflated guess to what Jason and the Argonauts got or made at the box office.
I never go first, so I'm going to go first.
By the way,
Sorry, can you cut that out?
Inflatuary.
I had a joke earlier, and
Okay.
I wanted to say it.
I really
I'm
want to
sorry.
get through this. It's fine. Okay. Based off a budget of it's an inflated $26 million. What do y'all think this did at the worldwide box office? Give me your inflated guesses.
50 million inflated.
So David's electing to go first. 50 million. Irina. So think 26 million budget.
45.
45. Noah.
26 million. I think.
It made its exact budget.
Yes.
AJ.
40.
Well, like around that area.
40. So there are two answers to this potentially. Do you want me to go with the not as good or the more optimistic?
Optimistic. I want optimistic.
Of course you want optimistic.
Yeah, I got the highest one, of course.
You win, yeah.
Okay, so I found two different numbers on its box office. One was 2.1 million, which translates to 18 million in today's dollars, and the other one I found was 4.56 million, which I actually think is more accurate, and that translates to 40 million in today's dollars.
AJ, you cheated. You definitely calculated the highest probable number, and then
can you tell us why
inflated
you think
it?
more
What was the
accurate
first
of the two
one?
numbers?
Reese, what was the first one?
So the first one was 2.1 million, but it said it was for rentals, which I don't even know what that means.
What was the...
I was answering AJ's question.
Oh, gotcha.
But the 4.56 I got from various other sources. It just seemed more accurate to me. I don't know why.
Could you? What's the crap?
It's
inflated.
18 million. Inflated.
18 million.
18 million to
versus
40.
What's the halfway point between those?
No, I'm going optimistic on this one.
What's the halfway point between those?
Add 11. Add 11 million. 29 million, probably.
So the difference between 40 and 18 is 22, which means add 11, like you said.
29 million.
29 million. Who's that closest to?
Public school, guys.
If you want to take the win, you can. But I honestly think the 4.58 million is a little more accurate.
Going to AJ.
We'll take your judgment.
Yeah,
AJ
needless
with
to
the 40 million.
Needless to say, this movie was not a huge box office contender, but it did gain cult film status over the years, and now it's kind of looked back on as a classic. So it's kind of a redemptive story for Jason and the Argonauts. We did not get a sequel for this movie, unfortunately, but that's not with it's not with lack of trying. It's so distracting. That is not for lack of trying. There was a plan put forth to do a sequel to this movie, which would have been The Trip Back from Thessaly. Harryhausen decided he didn't want to be a part of it, though.
Back to Thessaly?
Back to Thessaly, yeah. But Ray Harryhausen decided not to do this in favor of doing the Sinbad movie. So he's Sinbad in the Seventh Wonder, I think it's called, or Sinbad in the Seventh something or other is the movie he decided to do instead. Do y'all remember the title of that movie?
I just remember Sinbad.
I'm really flying blind
Batman.
on this.
Wait, so which was better, the Hydra or the Kraken?
Batman?
I haven't
Why did I
watched
say Batman?
the new one again, but I don't know.
I think Kraken. I like Hydra, but I like Kraken more.
Kraken is iconic.
Yeah, I don't know what it was called. Ugh, I'm losing it,
Seven
guys.
Seas?
Seven Seas sounds right.
Legend of the Seven Seas.
No,
But
that was
the
the animated movie.
Animated film.
yeah.
Yeah, so that did not get made.
Seven something?
Yeah.
Seven Deadly Sins.
Yeah, so that did not get made mainly because the main reason you would sell this movie on would be Harryhausen being involved. So there was no sequel made to Jason and the Argonauts. However, a miniseries called Jason and the Argonauts came out in 2000, and after that, Stephen Sommers, the director of The Mummy, wanted to make a reboot/sequel to Jason and the Argonauts called simply The Argonauts. This film would have been a reboot, not a reboot, but it would be the first portion of the movie would be a remake of Jason and the Argonauts, and then the second half of the movie would be a new adventure, picking up where that one left off.
Okay, so where this movie was already fast-paced, that would make it even faster.
Yeah, but you think about Stephen Sommers, he did The Mummy, he did Van Helsing, you could kind of imagine what this would be. And I weirdly think Stephen Sommers would be a good fit for something like this.
He could do it. I don't think he'd be the best.
He has that fantasy brain, though.
Who really nailed the look of those shambling mummies? Who could do some
Or
really
those
cool looking skeletons?
Yetis throwing football.
I think
That wasn't Stephen Sommers. That was a different director.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
never mind. Take back.
Denis Villeneuve would do a great job.
do a good job
you
of
can't-
anything.
You
That's what I
can't
was
throw
gonna
him
say.
at everything.
Well, no, but it's the magnitude. This is
yeah, but
in my
then
brain.
he
an
would
epic.
have the whole like, yeah, I'm Jason, and then just an expansive sea and him like just staring at it.
Yeah, I think of.
Okay.
See, the thing
see a
about
problem.
Jason and the Argonauts is I get kind of a little bit of a cheese vibe with it. A little bit of goofy dialogue, a little bit of a goofy setup, but it's perfect for what it is. Mm-hmm. With Denny, I don't really see any cheese at all. He's extremely good at what he does.
I
And
want a
if he
serious
made it,
movie. I don't
if
want
he made
cheese.
it, well, okay. Here's what I'm saying. It done perfectly. It wouldn't feel like cheese, but there's some goo there.
No, this needs to be
There's
an.
a little gooey
I
center.
think to do a remake or a sequel to this, it needs to be an epic, grand, fun adventure.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
normally
Fun,
do not
exactly.
associate Villeneuve with fun.
Yeah,
Which is really funny because, I mean, he can do everything else, but for some reason he can't capture fun.
I think he can. He just doesn't.
Yeah, he's not interested.
Fun's
in that.
not his.
I'm not
MO.
interested in fun.
Would y'all watch a Stephen Sommers directed The Argonauts
Of course
movie?
I probably
David would watch it. Yeah.
He would give it a 7.
Yeah.
Guys, how many times are we going to touch on this? I'm
Oh,
giving you
apparently
one.
a lot.
One time per episode.
It's too late.
7.
Okay, so that about wraps up our discussion on Jason and the Argonauts. We are going to keep it Harryhausen. Next week,
Just like
Clash of the Titans, the 1981 original, which will then be followed by the remake and the sequel to that film. So we are staying in the Clash of the Titans world for the next 3 episodes. So get ready. All right. Goodbye, you guys.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.
If I had to punish every blasphemy, I would have no followers.